Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, Operationalized Purple Teaming. My name is Carol, author of SANS. Today's featured speaker is Jorge Orchilles, SANS Principal Instructor. If during the webcast you have any questions for Jorge, please enter them into the Q&A window at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Jorge.
Thank you so much, Carol. And hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Monday. Hopefully everyone had a great weekend. And if you're watching the recording, hello at whatever day or time it is. My name is Jorge Orchilles, and today we're going to talk about operationalized purple teaming. So this is a series of webcasts that I've been doing with SANS, along with a blog series on getting started and really shifting and evolving from vulnerability management and penetration testing over to red teaming and purple teaming. So hopefully you've caught some of those. If you have not, no worries. I'll do a little intro here. Don't want to repeat too much of things that we've already covered and is recorded. So we'll get right to it. This is operationalized purple teaming, how we can leverage cyber threat intelligence to test new TTPs and perform detection engineering. As usual, this is recorded. The slides will be available. We'll send them to you a couple days after, and it will be posted. The recordings will be posted on your SANS portal, and then eventually it goes out on YouTube as well. A little bit about myself. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at a startup called Scythe, where we do adversary emulation. It's a platform for doing that. And as Carol said, I am now a principal SANS instructor. Yay! Got actually promoted last week from a SANS certified instructor to a principal. So very excited about that. I've been teaching for SANS for many, many years. I believe the number was around 12. So excited about that. I teach the purple team courses, Security 699 and 599, Security 504. Also have a 2-day red team exercise and adversary and emulation course, which is now going to become a 6-day course, Security 565. Prior to, or actually during some of the SANS teaching I also ran the offensive security group at Citigroup for 10 years. And I've done a number of contributions to a community. Love contributions. If you've done anything different, tag me. Let me check out your projects. Some of them you may have heard of, like the Purple Team Exercise Framework, which we'll talk about here, C2 Matrix, CVSS version 3.1, some others. So big shout out to ISSA. They got me the original job over at Citi, believe it or not. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover what is purple teaming, because there's still some confusion out there. We will straighten that out. And then we're going to jump straight into operationalized purple teaming. How can we work as a purple team when something comes up? Not necessarily when there is a new or an exercise plan, but maybe some new threat intel just came out. How can we get our teams together collaborating? So I'm going to cover that. Of course, it's a cycle. If you've seen any of the frameworks I've released, there's lots of cycles because there is no end state in security, right? We do this and then we do it again and again and again. And every time we get better and better and better. Of course, I'm going to give you a ton of resources throughout all of this and some live demos and all that fun stuff if you've ever joined one of these with me hosting. So something new that came out, and you might have seen a little bit of this last webcast, and that was the ethical hacking maturity model. So you put out a model of how some of us in the financial industry kind of matured from vulnerability scanning to vulnerability assessment to pen testing, then eventually doing red teaming and purple teaming and adversary emulation. So I was talking with a few folks that have done this before as well, that they built internal red teams in their organization. And we realized that knowing what we know today, we probably would have started our internal red team program and capabilities by doing some purple teaming. So I posted that as a joint blog post I will share it with you all here, send it here in the chat. And yes, by the way, if you have questions, post the questions. I can see your questions up here and maybe I'll answer them live. So this is a blog series. There's a number of different blog posts I've published, sort of how to evolve from your vulnerability management and pen testing world to red teaming and purple teaming. So this one, we propose this updated model of going from pen testing to testing TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, as a purple team before you go off and do a stealth red team engagement. Now, every company is different. We know that. You're there to provide value. So, of course, focus on what brings the most value to your organization. So this blog actually goes through a report. I'm going to use that as our use case here. But if you would like to see it, it's there. I just posted it here on the chat for everyone. So we propose that you should definitely do vulnerability assessment, vulnerability management, then exploit some of those vulnerabilities, see the real business risk of those vulnerabilities. But vulnerabilities in technology is not the only way people are getting in. And that's why MITRE released MITRE ATT&ck. Stands for adversaries, tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. That's a little different than their common vulnerability and exposures. So this is kind of where we get to talk about purple teaming and red teaming and adversary emulation, really being a shift into this different type of assessment. Not saying to not do the previous ones. Definitely, they all bring value. Focus on bringing value to your orgs. So level set. If you weren't here in our previous webcast, what is a purple team? It is a collaboration between various information security skill sets. It's a virtual functional team that works together to test, measure, and improve your overall security posture. That means your people, your process, and your technology. And most of the time, these are teams that have skill sets in cyber threat intelligence, that understand how attacks work, and they can extract and provide the adversary behaviors, their tactics, techniques, and procedures, which are three things. The red team is the team that emulates these TTPs, and the blue team are the defenders, right? It's a catch-all phrase for defenders. In your organization, you might have a security operations center, you might have a threat hunting team, you might have a digital forensics and incident response team, or you might have some managed security services like managed detection and response or managed SOC. It doesn't matter, because as long as they're collaborating, then we have ourselves a purple team function. And that is what we're going to dive into today. So I am a big fan of frameworks. We will be diving into the purple team exercise framework a little deeper today. If you were at our original one on how to run an exercise, I'll cover that one high level. But this is more on operationalizing. This is version 2. It's out and it's available there on GitHub. I will give you the link right there. Live links coming right at you. Because you can follow along and, of course, leverage this and give us feedback. If there's something that you would improve, let us know. Lessons learned is a very important part of purple teaming. It's how we improve. So if there are if you have any feedback, please reach out. It's on GitHub. You could put issues there. You could put PRs, etc. And how a purple team exercise generally works is you leverage cyber threat intelligence, you do some preparation, then you execute the exercise all together, collaborating together, right? And then you have lessons learned. So I'm going to go through that relatively quick if you haven't done this before. So cyber threat intel, every organization is different. If you have an internal team, that's great. If you have a consulting team, if you pay a vendor to do this, they should follow most of these steps, right? Understand your organization, identify adversaries are likely to attack your organization, gather threat intelligence from that adversary, and that applies to your org, extract the TTPs, the tactic, techniques, and procedures, analyze those and organize those to create a plan that you can then go through and emulate. This works for red team engagements. It works for purple team engagements as well. And last time I showed you this TTP pyramid. I'm sure you're familiar with the Pyramid of Pain by David Bianco. This pyramid grows a little bit on that. See, the top of the Pyramid of Pain covers TTPs, but TTPs are 3 different things: tactics, techniques, and procedures. And our focus when we're doing these practical exercises, these hands-on keyboard exercises, is on the procedures. We want that very low-level, detailed information about adversary behaviors. If you're speaking with someone else in your organization, maybe your manager, then you might not focus on the procedures. You might be talking to them at the technique level. And then as you go further up in the organization, you'll probably focus on the tactics, something like gaining credential access, moving laterally, exfiltrating data. Those are all tactics. Techniques go a little deeper. And of course, the procedures are the actual procedures that are done. And this is really where the industry is going when it comes to TTPs. 3 different things that allow us to communicate, but the procedures, of course, are the ones that allow us to actually do these purple team engagements and this operationalized purple team. There's a ton of preparation that goes into running an exercise, especially if you're bringing people in from their day-to-day job. They're going to come to a conference room, maybe travel, maybe just take a couple hours out of their day to be part of this exercise. So you want to be prepared, right? And the framework covers preparation very in depth, from target systems to security controls are in place, making sure they're reporting, etc. But the area I want to highlight here is a fairly new area to MITRE ATT&ck, and that is the data sources. Since October 2021, the data sources and the detection area of MITRE ATT&ck now have IDs. They're data source IDs. You see that number DS0017. It's a command for command execution. That's important for us, especially when we start talking about detection engineering, which I'll talk about briefly here. And our next webcast will actually focus only on detection engineering. So again, we're bringing you in and up to speed for this. And we need to know about data sources. When something runs, where do we have the visibility? Where can we detect it? Well, of course, most tools will log something locally. Let's say your Windows endpoint, you do something on that endpoint, it should log it locally, right? Depends, right? Windows by default doesn't actually log that much. You might have things like sysmon, you might have things like an EDR. Or what about going out to the internet? You have a proxy, it should be logging things there locally. And from there, you generally take your logs and you move them to a central log repository. And that's going to be different in your organization. You're probably going to have multiple ones of these. If you do cloud, you're probably going to have some in the cloud. And maybe you're not even moving them centrally. Maybe you go into a particular host and pull that information directly. Maybe you send it to Splunk. Maybe you send it to Elastic. I don't know. Those are things that we want to talk about in the preparation phase. And then, of course, you're going to have alerts. If you use a, like most of you most likely do, you have some alerts there. But of course, you need to log something first to then be able to correlate that and build alerts. The other metrics we like to see are around time. When we hear of new cyber threat intelligence report, we always see time as a metric. How long was the threat actor in that target system? What was the dwell time, right? So when we talk purple team exercises, we want to measure that as well. We want to see things like time to detect, time to investigate, which generally requires people, and time to remediate and really mitigate that attack. So lots to cover in preparation. These are the ones that we're going to talk about here as we operationalize purple team. And then in a purple team exercise, you bring everyone together. Generally, you have an exercise coordinator. They will present an adversary, present some TTPs, explain how that TTP works. And then you have a tabletop discussion. You go around and you see, what does the SOC analyst think would happen when this executes? What does the hunt team think that they will see? What would the defer team see? And you document all of this. Fun to bring in managers and more senior level to see their expectations and see if they map with the analyst's expectations. And then you have the red team emulating that TTP, sharing the screen, showing how to emulate it. Then the blue team goes, they share their screen, they see if there maybe was an alert. If there was, that's awesome. Follow the process now. What do you do? How do you escalate this? And if there wasn't, then you perform your detection engineering, which is figuring out the data sources, collecting them, and then building queries and maybe correlation rules to get alerts. And then you repeat this for different TTPs. You've done your first exercise. That's awesome. When's the next one? Sometimes people do these quarterly, sometimes monthly. I have a customer that does it every Friday for 2 hours. Very fun way to spend a Friday. And then, of course, we track all of this. We track the TTPs. You can map it to the tactic. You can map it to the technique, which is what we see most today, or you can actually log all the procedures that you tested. And you see if something wasn't being alerted, if something wasn't getting logged, you show that improvement, right? It's always about showing value. So it was a very, very quick intro here on a purple team exercise. Now, let's say you ran your first purple team exercise. Actually, I'd love to ask you all that. How many of you have done a purple team exercise? Go ahead and chat that over to me. I'm one of the only hosts and panelists. I believe you can write to me. Oh, no, you can't. Hold on. Now you can. All right. Chat it over to me. Saw someone posted this over on the Q&A.
And George, this is Carol. I'll go ahead and open up the chat window for people to respond in there. I think that'll be easier than the Q&A window.
Yep, I just did that. I allowed them to chat to us only. Cool. So you have done tabletops, you've done emulations. That's awesome. Good to hear. So good job. High five, first of all. That's cool. Bet it took a lot of energy to get that going, a lot of coordinating, a lot of planning, kind of stressful, a little anxiety before that first exercise, right? But hopefully you followed our framework and it was successful. And now the question is, what next? Oh, what we've seen, again, this is based on people giving us feedback, is that most organizations start with a purple team exercise. You bring everyone together, it's exciting, lots of planning, lots of prep, you do the exercise, and then you go back to your day-to-day, you take your lessons learned, maybe you do some detection engineering on the afterwards, etc. And then what happens? Oh, you schedule another one, or maybe organizations do this once a year, maybe quarterly, and you get quicker and quicker, maybe monthly. Maybe you get down to a point where you're doing it weekly. And that's all great, right? You keep doing these, right? Don't stop doing this by implementing other processes. What we're going to cover today is how can we operationalize that, right? You still have your separate dedicated teams. You have your cyber threat intelligence team, you have your red team, you have your blue team. And when something new comes up, maybe a new CTI report, maybe a red team found out a new cool way of doing something that hasn't been documented by anyone else before. Maybe the blue team is seeing an attack that they haven't seen before. And maybe the industry hasn't seen it either, right? That can happen. Well, we can bring everyone together and perform one of these exercises. The last one here, I'm starting to see, and the verdict is still out, and that is a dedicated purple team. So I've seen a number of companies are hiring for this. Most of them, though, are hiring them under the red team director or manager role, which is interesting. That is not how we did it back in my previous employer, but the verdict is still out there. We will find out, or the jury's still out. We will see how that worked out and if that's the right place to put it. But essentially, some organizations are hiring purple teamers to be exercise coordinators and be the ones interacting, or maybe even doing this all the time. So we'll eventually get to that and talk to that. Here, we're going to focus on operationalized purple team. So cycles. We love cycles because cycles keep repeating, right? There's no end state for you or for any of us here in security, right? Something new is going to come out all the time. So we start over on the left. Step one, of course, when some new CTI or some new TTP is discovered. We hear about it, maybe it got posted out on Twitter, maybe Microsoft or Red Canary or Mandiant or someone released their new report. And of course, we go through it. We understand what the CTI is. We understand what occurred in that particular threat. And we want to analyze and organize those TTPs. Big shout out to the cyber threat intelligence vendors and the DFIR folks that map to MITRE ATT&ck. It's a great step, right? MITRE ATT&ck maps at the technique level. If you get procedure level information, that's even better. And then we come together and we do a little tabletop discussion, just like we would in an in-person exercise or during a formal purple team exercise. We discuss this. Where would we have detections? Or maybe we already tested this and we should definitely have this detection. Or maybe it's a little variation on the procedure and we should have the data sources, but I'm not really sure. We document that. Then the red team goes and they emulate the attack, figure out how to do the attack, share that information. And then if there were gaps, we perform detection engineering. And then we loop around this. Whenever something new comes out, we can bring our team together and collaborate. We don't have to wait for the next exercise, right? We can bring some of these TTPs for the next exercise, of course. But in this case, let's go through operationalized. So step one, new cyber threat intelligence was released. This could be from the CTI team. It could be from one of your CTI vendors, or it could be the red team. The red team's over there figuring out new ways of doing things, getting around defenses, right? Defense evasion is one of the areas red teams are spending a lot of time on because we're getting better. Yes, our job as red teamers is to make our jobs harder on a daily basis. And that's great. That means we're improving. So a red team might be out doing some research, finding some new ways of doing something. Or maybe your blue team is looking at a threat hunt. They're finding something in particular. They didn't have alerts for it. They're not too sure if it's malicious. Maybe let's bring everyone together and take a look. See if we understand what's occurring. It might end up being an actual attack in your org. So anyone can initiate this, and that's very important, right? It's not just because a new CTI report came out. It can be coming from internal CTI, internal red, or internal blue. Now that comes in, you should have a way to notify the team, right? Maybe have a Slack channel or a Microsoft Teams channel or whatever it is that you use and post it up there. Hey, look, this new tweet or this new report came out. And whether you initiate in a purple team or not, it's great to share that information, take a look at it, see who should look into this. And then you assign team members, right? You have dedicated teams in CTI and red and blue, assign them. We allow for self-assigning because maybe someone sees something, they see that interests them and they want to take it. Or if it's something that requires quicker attention, maybe the manager will point that out. So for our use case here, and again, this is following the blog that I wrote with Antonio Piazza, who's a STI student, shout out to him. We're gonna go through this Red Canary report. Have you all taken a look at this yet? If not, I'll post it over here. Great report, comes out every year. I've been following it since 2019. And oh, Antonio's here. Shout out to you, Antonio. So this threat report has been coming out every year, I believe since 2019 was the first year it came out. And actually, I was writing my Red Team course. This was a 2-day Red Team exercise and adversary emulation course. And I had to pick what TTPs we were going to go through in class because it was only a 2-day class. And back then, MITRE ATT&ck had what, like 400 some techniques? You can't do all of those in 2 days. So what do we use? Where do we go? Well, this threat report, and big shout out to Red Canary, is a great place to start. And they just released this one. I mean, like just now, probably less than a month ago. And it's a full report, right? It covers trends, threats, techniques, which is what we're going to look at, and whatnot. So definitely head over there, give it a download. But I want to go through this one. It has these top 10 techniques that they saw in real customer engagements and intrusions. So if you're getting started with purple teaming and you don't have a CTI team, this is probably a great place to start, right? This is what we're saying. Like, if you've never built a red team before, why not start collaborating with the blue team and start with some of these techniques that are the most seen out there? So we go to the top one, T1059, Command and Script Interpreter. And this is a technique that has multiple sub-techniques. And lo and behold, the #1 sub-technique most used, something you may have heard about called PowerShell, right? The new Microsoft Windows shell. It comes as part of the operating system. You cannot remove it. It's one of those. It's a perfect example. You can't get rid of this. There's no open and closed finding here. PowerShell can run and will run in your environment. You cannot remove it. So you must figure out a way to detect it and detect what's bad while not getting alerts on what is just standard PowerShell in your environment. So we click over here and see more, and we see their breakout. Their breakout is awesome. Big shout out again to Red Canary. Love you all, especially for this free resource. It has analysis, which explains what PowerShell is, why adversaries use it, how they use it. And then a little further down, that covers visibility. What data sources do you need to be able to see that this is occurring in your environment? A little deeper, it goes into collection. Exactly what event IDs you need to collect. Some are Windows security events. Oh, this one doesn't have Sysmon. Some of them are Sysmon. And then how to actually do the detection. So these are great human readable reports that allow us to go through all of this and build it. And then all the way at the bottom, they cover how to actually test for this. Red Canary is the maintainer of a phenomenal project called Atomic Red Team. These are little single tests, atomic tests, as the name suggests, that allows you to test for this. So this is an awesome report. Now, if you are doing this for somewhere else, what is our next step? Our step 2 is to analyze and organize these TTPs, right? So this one in particular, this report is awesome because it actually already did it for us, but a lot of reports will not. So we got lucky on this one. We extracted these TTPs. They were already mapped to MITRE ATT&ck. And then something that you would have to do is correlate this and see if you've tested these before. Now, there's a bunch of ways to track it. What we did is give you an Excel, given that anyone can open up a sheet, so that you can use this immediately, right? The SANS promise, be able to use this as soon as this webcast is over. So you have it there. You can use a number of different ways of tracking this. That's probably another webcast that we will do, although I did one a couple of years ago on a free tool called Vector. There's also a commercial one called PlexTrack. Some of the top ones for tracking TTPs instead of your open and closed issues. And again, this is provided for you. I'm going to swing over there. Over here's our community threats GitHub for this Red Canary emulation plan. And in particular, there's this Excel file. We actually just updated it a little bit ago. I'm going to give a shout out to Chris, who's my detection engineer here in our purple team at site. But it's all there. Again, community, free stuff, all for you. So we analyze and organize the TTPs. Then we come together and we have our tabletop discussion. So again, I'm going to show you this from this Excel. You can download the Excel right here where it says Red Canary 2022 report mapping TTPs. You can click that and it will open up this Excel. Now, this Excel has a little bit more information because, of course, we've already gone through the entire cycle, right? But before you get to the actual testing part, you have, oops, clicked on a link, sorry. There we go. You have your CTI source. You have your tactic, MITRE ATT&ck mapping, right? Your tactic, they did execution. That's a high level way to communicate. The technique, little more detailed way of talking about execution. They did command and script interpreter with PowerShell. We may have the procedure. This is an area that a lot of CTI reports don't, but if you're in CTI, do it. Give us procedures. We love it. That's where the industry is going. Then, in this case in particular, we cover how to do it with Scythe, which is an adversary emulation platform. But of course, you can do this without Scythe, and I'm going to show you that right now. And then we have some more details over here. Collection, what are the data sources required for this? And in this case, Red Canary's report provides us detection as well. You might not get most of this, right? Most of the time, you'll get a CTI source, maybe a technique ID, and sometimes that's it. But with a technique ID, you can get data sources. And once you figure out the procedure, you can build out those detections. Now, I'll cover this in a second. So we build out this Excel, right? Or whatever tracker you use, right? Try to go with free tools, Google Sheets or Open Office, LibreOffice, whatever it is that's free. And then from there, we have the tabletop. We can discuss if this is one of your first engagements, right? Figure out who you need to talk to. See if you have these data sources. What you're going to learn is that you're going to have to work with the operating system engineers in your organization, right? They're the ones that enable certain logs. Maybe the engineers of the firewalls and the proxies and the EDR, right? Because if you don't have those data sources, bring them in, teach them some of this. Then if you do have the data sources and you've worked together and your blue team knows that they have detection for this, that's awesome. Write it down. The expected result is this PowerShell.exe-e. -E stands for encoded, does base 64 encoding, will be detected. Will get logged. Yeah, it's gonna get logged. And I think we have some alerts depending on the size of the command line or something. I don't know. I'm making things up as I go, right? Someone's gonna tell you, yes, I think that is how we would be able to detect that. And you go TTP by TTP, right? So the next one is command line, Windows command shell. The next one's run DLL 32. So you see all the mappings already been done for you. We're giving you this Excel as part of the community threads for you to grab it, have your tabletop, and see what's possible and what's not. But then we did go one step further. See, the next step is the red team needs to emulate this. And now I know not everyone has an internal red team. I know that. I've learned that. Took me a little. I spent 10 years in the financial industry space. Like everyone had a red team. But that's not true, right? Some organizations don't have internal red teams. But you still want to emulate this. You still want to actually test this because a tabletop brings value. Yes, 100%. But we want details. We want to see what actually happened. And if you test this in production, even better. See if this meets your requirements or meets your expectations. So if you don't have a red team, you would have to set up your attack infrastructure most of the time. And if you do have a red team, hear me out how to do this. You have your red team attack infrastructure for your stealth red teaming, right? Where you buy those real cool custom domains and you have it there aging with the TLS certificates that aren't from Let's Encrypt, so they look legit, right? Leave that there. Don't use that one. And then you build out your purple team infrastructure, right? You're going to be doing this together. You don't need to buy that way custom domain. You might be able to do some of this internally, right? If you're not testing C2, which by the way, this plan doesn't, you might not need a command and control server, but you should always have a plan. Always come up with a plan because you don't want to be YOLOing in your environment. You say, hey, this new report came out. We did this work. Look at this documentation. Look at our little tabletop that we did. Now we want to emulate it, get permission, right? Always get permission. I seem to like skip through some of this basic stuff because I assume everyone does that, but yes, always get permission, right? And then now you have a plan. You have a well-written plan. And this plan, again, like I said, is available over here in our community threads GitHub. You actually scroll down. Of course, we released an automated emulation plan if you use Scythe or you're using Scythe manually, but sticking with our free theme here, all the way down here, you have manual emulation with Scythe. Here, let me actually give you that exact, actually without Scythe, sorry. It's right there. And it tells you, you need to execute this from a non-privileged command.exe. Okay. And you can literally highlight and copy this. Copy and paste this. Very, very simple. Of course, we go through step by step on all of them, explaining what they are, what they do. You have your Excel there, right? And you got some nice, interesting ones. Some PowerShell down here that does invoke obfuscation. You have renaming of system utilities and executing that, things like that, all nicely documented for you so you can easily copy and paste, right? There should be no excuse for anyone not doing this, right? You can test this out in a lab environment, on virtual machines, wherever you want. We've essentially taken this Red Canary report that is amazing and operationalized it so you can run your exercise. So you go one by one, execute this, right? In this particular one, it's you pop open a command.exe on your target system, you copy and paste this PowerShell.exe/e and you execute it. You show everyone what occurred, right? And then we go on to step 5, where we have the blue team stepping up, right? What did the blue team see? Did it meet the expectation? You did document the expectation. I gave you a sheet for you to do that, right? Did it meet it? Was it blocked? Was it detected? Was it logged locally? Was it logged centrally? Is there an alert on your SIM? I don't know the answers. Those are answers that you're going to verify by doing this and showing that these are indeed meeting your expectations. Now, if they're not, That's where detection engineering comes in. Like I said, detection engineering is on a whole nother webcast. It's actually going to be the next one. I'm going to bring Chris Peacock on. He is our detection engineer over at Scythe and part of our Purple team. And he actually did a lot of this work, particularly this image and some of the stuff I'm going to show you in the next slide. So I figured out the red team part, how to execute this, right? Thank you again, Red Canary. You made it very easy for us this time. And now we execute it. So starting with direction, we have the CTI, we understand the procedures, we execute it. Now, there was no alert. What do we do next? Do we have the data sources? Well, let's first look on the local system. Oh, the local system was running Sysmon. That's awesome. With a custom configuration. Okay, did it catch this? Yes, it did. Great. Now, did it get sent to where it needed to get sent, or was it just logged locally? No, it got sent. Excellent. How did it get sent? How long did it take? Now, once it got sent, you can query it on, let's say. Are there any alerts? Do we have the SIM functionality? Do we have correlation going? Was it processed? Is there a query that maybe our threat hunting team can look for? Oh, yes, I have a saved query just for that, says detection threat hunter 2. What? You have a query for this? I do this manually every time. Why didn't you share that query with me? Oh, it's here. I put it up on our wiki page. You didn't see it? No. My gosh, this is saving me so much time. Happens every time, right? And then dissemination. Right? Train the rest of the team. If it is going to remain as a query for threat hunting, does the entire team know about it? Can they do it? Do they know what to do once they find this? Right? And for something like PowerShell.exe/e, which uses encoding, right? What do they do next? Right? This obviously is an easy one. They go and they put that base64 encoded into their cyber chef or whatever they use. They decode it. They analyze what was actually executed, right? A process. You go through and see how our threat hunter 2 went through and did their hunt and then understood what was getting executed. And everyone learns. Now, this of course won't happen every time. Sometimes you're not going to have the data sources you need. Sometimes you're not going to have the correlation rules, or maybe you do. And when you try to turn on that alert, what happens? You get 3 million hits over the past 9 months, or 3 months, because I know you're not keeping 9 months, right? Or over the last month, there was 1 million hits. Oh no, what do you have to do? Right? So this is a process where you're working together. Yes, some new TTP came out. We had some data sources, but we weren't catching exactly this known bad. Big advantage here is that you are doing known bad, right? Now, these particular procedures aren't actually that bad. If you go through them, you see sometimes they just echo back like hello from PowerShell and things like that. But we're talking about process here. The other thing, and another big shout out there to Chris Peacock from my team, is mapping to Sigma. We love Sigma. Actually, Chris is one of the top contributors to Sigma. And the reason we love it is that most customers, and probably most of the people, probably even a poll here, you all have different security stacks. You use different EDRs. Some of you may or may not use Sysmon. Some of you may or may not use, I don't know, Splunk or, you know, whatever. Insert your EDR, insert your SIM, insert, you know, your security stack, right? And don't tell me, OPSEC, I don't want to know. But Sigma allows you to build rules and tune those rules, and then over to whatever it is that you use. So it's the biggest bang for our buck here of coming up with Sigma rules. And this in particular Red Canary didn't do. So now you have that. And again, shout out to Chris. Not sure if he's on or not, but he did all this work and essentially came up with the Sigma rules for each of these items. So if you do download this, you'll have the links there. You can click on one and it takes you straight to that Sigma rule. And Chris is there. Hello. So it's a process, right? And then we rinse and repeat. Give you 12 procedures for you to do this. If you can, or next week, or soon, right? Because these are the top techniques that were found. Not the top procedures, but technique level is still better than nothing. So the next time something new comes out, you now have worked with your team, you've collaborated, you build a process to operationalize purple teaming. New CTI comes in, you assign folks, they go through and look at it, they analyze and organize those TTPs, they extract the procedures if possible. If not, we'll do technique level, still better than nothing. Then we'll have a tabletop discussion. For sure, if it's something that gets very popular in the media, right? You're gonna have your C-levels or your management team asking you about this. You're gonna say, yep, it's part of our process. We're going through it. So far, we've tabletopped it. Our expectation is that we're going to catch it. We have these rules, but we're gonna test it now to make sure that that's the case. Of course, you know, we'll go threat hunting and whatnot. Then you emulate the attack. Why you have the red team, and if you don't have the red team, provide you a ton of these so that you can do it without having a red team on board. No red teams, not everyone has them. And then, of course, if it all worked and your process was fantastic, and from the moment you executed that, within 35 seconds, you had an alert on your main SOC channel, high five. Now, if that didn't happen, of course, you will do some detection engineering and always improve and continue to test and hopefully catch the malicious threat actors before boom, right? Before that impact, before exfiltration, before ransomware, right? So again, very a cycle here because there is no end state. Now, as usual, I like giving you more resources. So one of the things I'm doing with SANS is being their purple team ambassador. I love purple teaming. If you love purple teaming, connect with me. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn and Discord. We have a Discord server for SANS. It's open to everyone. And you have a ton of purple team resources there, from webcasts to blog posts to workshops. And we're going to be releasing a lot more resources there. There's also the SANS blog. That's where, as I mentioned, again, shout out to Antonio. We did a blog post there on, really, it's a series. So this is the third in a series of building internal red teams and going purple. You can go up here to resources, click on blog, and then down here, just click on purple team, and here you can see a number of them. Shifting from pen testing to red team and purple team, that was the first one. Then cyber kill chain, MITRE attack and purple teaming, and next building an internal red team, go purple first. Scythe, where I work, we love giving back to the community. That's why we have these community threats. Even if you don't use the Scythe product, you can leverage this, right? You can copy and paste these commands one by one. Of course, you can automate all of this and whatnot. That's our focus, but we love giving back to the community. So, you know, not a sales pitch, but it's there. It's a community resource for you. And then, of course, SANS has 2 purple team courses that are awesome. I'm a little biased because I teach them. That's Security 599, Defeating Advanced Adversaries, and Security 699, Purple Team Tactics. And the question I always get is, which one do I take? And the answer I always give is, it depends. Where are you? Everyone is different. You're on your different tracks. You have your different areas you want to improve. One of the original classes I love is Security 504, the GCIH. So shout out to anyone that has that. And then I would take the security 599. That's the defeating advanced adversaries. Now do note, SANS has a numbering system, very similar to college. So a 600 level class is going to be harder than a 500 level class, right? So keep that in mind. Can you skip and go to 699? Of course, but just make sure you're prepared and meet the prereqs. In 599, there's about 20% focus on red and a 80% focus on blue. And a lot of that blue is on prevention, right? You have to do some of these basic things to stand a chance, right? Covers a number of preventive controls you can turn on. And then, of course, some detection to detect when that was going. Both courses are very hands-on, but the 699 one is a little more advanced, does not focus on prevention. It's really 50% red, 50% blue, and focusing on emulation and detection. So you have your stack, you have an attacker stack, you have a defender stack, you build Sigma rules, you send it through with Logstash, you use Elastic, you use the Hive, things like that. So those are available to you as resources. Again, reach out to me if you have any questions there. And of course, the slides and recordings will be available. Someone asked here, when will the next chapter be? The next webcast, I'm actually going to bring Chris on. I have a date. If you give me 2 seconds, I might be able to pop up a date. What date say? May 12th. May 12th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to have Chris on here talking about detection engineering in that process. And then, of course, we'll continue to blog and keep the series going, getting more and more technical as we go, right? A lot of this has been focused on process because it is people, process, and technology. You're the people, you're learning a process, then we can put any technology on top of it. It really is the bottom part of our pyramid, right? Is a technology. We can do it through a number of ways. Question on where will 565 fit into these two classes? 565 is red team operations and adversary emulation. It is 100% red course. So no prevention, no detection, no blue. It will have, of course, lots and lots of labs because we all learn through different methods, by seeing, by hearing, by reading, and of course by doing. So we'll definitely have lots and lots of labs. I went through the courseware already. It's awesome. It's 2 of the days from my course, and then 4 brand new days of content. So really, really cool stuff. I believe there's a webcast coming up in the next month or so on 565. But yeah, definitely check that one out as well, especially if that's where you're headed, right? And everyone's different. Any other questions? Thank you, Michael. Seeing some folks giving a shout out. Hello, hello, hello. Nice seeing you all. Yes, I did cut my hair. If you didn't recognize me, went with a spiky hair look this time. Am I hiring? We're always hiring. I believe there might be a couple open recs. I will message you that. Any other questions? Like I said, look me up on Twitter or LinkedIn or Discord. We have a Discord. That you can all join. Let me see if I get that Discord link up. Let's see if I find it. I'm gonna have to post it later. Awkward silence because there's no questions. All right. There's no other questions. Oh, here we go. any good resources on how to properly communicate the value to a more business-minded audience? That is something I'm working on as we speak. So shout out, Justin. Great question, right? Of course, a lot of what we've talked about has been very hands-on, right? We're doing hands-on purple team exercises. So we focus all the way down on the procedure levels and whatnot. Now, about resources for communicating with more business-minded audiences, right? The MITRE-ATT&ck framework is great for that. As I mentioned, go higher up, go up to the tactical level. But a lot of senior management will see this nice little MITRE-ATT&ck heat map and think it's a bingo card. Say, hey, I want a heat map on what coverage we have. And then, of course, you see vendors after the attack eval saying, we have 100% coverage of the TTPs used in the evals, right? So yes, it is hard. I don't have a particular resource available right now. I am working on a more C-level presentation. But yes, it's definitely something we need to do. One of the things back when I started the red team, our CISO, Charles Blonner, awesome, best CISO ever. He got it. He understood MITRE-ATT&ck and TTPs and all that, but he had to show at the board level how this red team that was newly formed was providing value and how we were improving. So we ended up using a tool like Vector to show and track improvements over time. It really gets you down to showing pie charts and bar graphs, but at that level, they don't really understand the procedures or TTPs. So it helped a little bit, but yeah, I don't think there's a defined answer for that or resource. And if there is, please share it with us. But that's a great question, Justin. Shout out there to Samuel. All right. Carol, you have any closing words or thoughts here?
Yes, well, thank you so much, George, for your great presentation, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.